On February 27th, 2025, I'd like to call our meeting to order. First item on our agenda is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So
Is there a second?
second.
All right, motion been made and seconded to approve the agenda. If there's no other discussion, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. First item on our agenda is a finance report from Karen. And I think Karen, just as the meeting was getting started, we discussed that we would just go for the December financial report instead of going through both of them. We will need to still kind of accept both of them. Is everybody okay with just doing that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I reviewed them.
Okay. Karen, if you want, you can, I'll navigate for you, or if you want to take over control, I can let you share your screen. However you want to do it.
Yeah, if you would like to give me control of the screen, that'd be great.
Where's Ryan?
We do have a comment in the chat. I don't know if you'd like to address it.
Yeah. All right. We'll take care of that.
All right,
Okay.
maybe. Oh, it is
Yeah.
very sluggish. Maybe I'll just let you do it.
Okay.
You've driven in the past and it's worked out just fine. Thank you for being a chauffeur.
All right, where do you want to start?
All right, so we'll start with our statements of assets and liabilities and net assets. So we ended the year with 964,000 in cash assets. Back in November, I closed the family assistance account because we didn't have activity on it in over a year. You all had approved the closing of that account for that reason. But it is still showing on our balance sheet because we did have a balance carried there throughout the year until November. So I just wanted to point that out. Other current assets were accounts receivable. So in terms of accounts receivable, these are items that we showed as credit card donations that came in the last few days of December. And so we're accruing them so that it shows on our balance sheet that we're intending to receive this money, but we won't get it until the new year. So that's assets. Property, plant, and equipment. For this section, we really need to have a construction work in progress. So a couple months ago, we paid for that special use permit for Pallet 24 project. And since Pallet 24 isn't constructed yet and it's not finished, it's not yet an asset, but it is a current asset because it is work in progress. We've already paid for the permit for that, and that ultimately will build into the expenditures for Pallet 24 when we do show it as an asset on our balance sheet. So not anything new there other than I think we might have covered this previously when we covered the October statements, that the Career Development Center we rolled into buildings, and its accumulated depreciation is also rolled into buildings now. So again, those will be shown on our balance sheet through the end of the year. When we go into 2025 financials, being that we ended the year with 0, I think we'll still have line items there so that there's that the 2-year comparison as we go throughout the year. But in 2026, those 2 line items will not be there. Let's scroll down to liabilities. So we had just $1,600 in current liabilities. Long-term liabilities is the building loan at $339,000. With our net assets sitting at 3.6 million. which is the majority of our building property, plant, and equipment. So sitting at net assets for the end of the year, 3.9 million. Our sheet is balanced. Let's move on to statements of revenues and expenditures. Okay, so year-to-date number, we are about 40,000 down in donations than we ended 2023 with. However, if you look at donations received in December, we received 30,000 more. So we've got some donors coming back to us, a lot of first-time donors seeing what we're doing. And so I'm proud that we were able to collect that many donations in the month of December. Even though overall for the year we didn't collect as much as we did in 2023. That's certainly something that we're working on in 2025 to really take hold of our fundraising strategies and to kind of build a policy on what we need to be doing continuously to reach out to our stakeholders and let them know what's going on, and also encourage them to keep giving to the shelters so that we can reduce our reliance on the city. Foundation grants also huge increase from 2023, still for year to date down about 25,000, and then grants overall, that big number is in large part due to the 2024 addendum that we received for Pallet 24, and some additional interior capitalization projects that we're doing. So to expand storage, to improve, I think, build new showers too. So got money from the city to do that. All of that construction is expected to be done soon, real soon. Administratively, we are up twice as much. We did end the year with twice as many employees as we did in 2023. That's just been overall. I know we've been talking a lot about salaries and wages. And so part of the administrative is that. The other part of it is it rolls into programs. When we talk about the 2023 audit, I'll talk about that a little bit more. Direct assistance is up from the previous year due to our work using the ESG grant funds for rapid rehousing. Facility-wise, again, we spent a lot of money just trying to make sure that the ship is staying fixed. We've had some issues in our kitchen with the walk-in cooler, and so that's been a big expense in December. Then payroll, of course, huge, always huge expense for the year. And then fundraising, we had some funds. We spent some money for our winter appeal mailer that went out. And then programs on here, I think I may have mentioned this before, but this is where we've been using that for background checks on new employees. So we still have things coming through there. And so overall for the year, we're down from last year, but still quite a bit. And I think we're also down from last year because I think in 2020, I say last year, in 2023, I think we still had some AmeriCorps funding, which rolled into the program line on here. Total depreciation for the year is 162,000, which makes sense. We had some capital projects going on in the year, a little bit more depreciation. And so we are setting at net assets of 3.6 million. Does anybody have any questions here?
No questions. Thank you.
All right, and then statements of cash flow just shows us where we're at. Net cash for our bank account, 625,000. So looking good there. Again, most of that is restricted funds. Most of that is restricted funds from that 2024 addendum that we received for Palette 24 project and the interior projects that we have going on. Okay.
Karen, can I interject something? When you say interior projects, we have not received funding for the shower renovations and the bathroom renovations. All that addendum money was for the outside construction. Those are two separate funding streams. So we haven't received any money for the remodeling of the restrooms and the additional storage for inside yet.
Oh, okay. Okay. So my
Okay.
mistake.
Okay.
I apologize for that.
That's all right.
It's the majority of the funding for help. I have that and I should know better.
All right, anything else on this page?
Yeah, we're good on this page. Cash at the end of the period was 961,000. Like I said, again, most of that is going to be that addendum buddy. Okay, here's the detail going out. Just in December, not too many businesses donating in December. So we're down. We budgeted just for the month, $2,000 in business donations. We had just had a quarter of that. Exceeded our individual donations for our budget by about 50,000. So that's great. Also, religious donations come in, and the DCCF and other foundation funding. So a lot of these things, I mean, you see 904,000 to what we budgeted. But again, at the beginning of the year, we didn't know that we were going to get addendum funding for Palette 24. So that's majority of that. But I think otherwise, I think we all said and done. I think we did pretty good in December. Operating expenses wise, you'll see repairs and maintenance, $15,000 spent. Really trying to get that walk-in cooler taken care of. I know that was a big, that just sticks out to me in my mind. And then some of our IT things going on. This for 2025, my plan is to split that out more so that you see a little bit more detail with the computer, internet, and IT. I feel like the internet should fall with the utilities, but the computer and the IT aspects, some of the recurring expenses that we have that are either due to licensing or service fees, that I feel like we all could benefit from some extra detail from that. You scroll down. Yeah, just not too many things here that were out of the ordinary. We spent less in accounting and legal fees than we budgeted for, which is great, but then we spent more in professional services. It was largely due to me prior to being onboarded as full-time employee. So December was my last time as a contractor, and now full-time. But and then again, salaries and wages, which is good. We spent less than we budgeted for salaries and wages wise, also with payroll taxes, and we did have an advance in December. But otherwise, nothing other than having some walk-in cooler woes, and nothing out of the ordinary for December. And then I believe the next pages will be year-to-date budget to actual, so you can see the various lines. Again, individual, we're down nearly 38,000. Not terrible, it's not great either, but like I said, we got some plans this year to really ramp up some donor engagement this year, and getting together some plans to really figure out how we're gonna increase funding overall.
Karen, can you tell us what's the donations other? There's like 11,000 there.
Let me check.
Looks like that's not something that we budgeted.
No, 'cause I feel like it's something that there wasn't really another great category for it, if that makes sense. Let me run really fast report. We're doing 2024. Okay, so donations other, back in March, we received $10,648.52 from American Online Giving Foundation. So really should be classified as foundation funding. But I think at the time when I was still getting accustomed to LCS, I think that made the most sense to me to put it in other. So I
Okay.
wasn't sure, but that's what that majority of that is 11,572. Because there's some other things that fall in there. Looks like there's some, Amazon credited us part of our fees. So I put that in there. And then there's a couple of Thrivent grants that have fallen in there as well to make it come up to that 11,000.
Karen, can you talk a little bit about what general supplies in the facility consist of? Like, it's just a budgeted and actual, that's a little bit of a difference, but could you give like an item of what qualifies under facility general supplies that would be significant from what we budgeted to what actual was in 2024?
Sure. So general supplies, things that fall in there will be like cutlery, disposable cutlery, and paper plates, napkins, things like that. We also put guest supplies in there too. So if we need more sheets, towels, pretty much anything that relates to taking care of the facility to keep it a safe and clean environment for our guests, it'll fall in there. Kitchen, I didn't feel, to me, the kitchen cutlery and like napkins and stuff in the containers for the food, I didn't feel like those were kitchen supply or grocery. Grocery is strictly food. So yeah, general supplies is anything that has to do with taking care of the facility. And sometimes it could be could be, it's cleaning supplies. I think I might have mentioned that. Maybe there's some like batteries that we might need, or over the counter cough medicine, or like acetaminophen type things that are we kind of need on hand in case a guest needs it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just wanted, like, what general was kind of, what items were located under general, what you consider general, as it pertains to operating costs and expenses is all. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, so if it's in facility general, it's guest related. If it's an office supply, it's an office supply. So, and that's an admin expense. So there's something that throughout the year, as I'm receiving these expenses and coming in, making sure that I'm coding them to the appropriate area. So if it's paper that we're using to like, for instance, notebooks, sometimes we'll buy or not sometimes, we'll buy notebooks for our guests for when they attend groups, and so they can do activities to learn skills. Maybe they're doing an exercise to, I don't know. I know they'll do budgeting with like jelly beans, they might use paper, they have various different group offerings, and so pens and paper, notebooks and such like that would fall into facility general. If it's something that we're going to be using in our offices and it's not going to be related to a guest, it falls into office supplies. So really, yeah, any of the facility is like a direct expense for the guest, as is the direct assistance. Direct assistance is even more so for the guests, like for the individual guests, because we do that for like purchasing clothing for them. They need something that fits them to help them get to a job interview, or maybe they don't have underwear, stuff like that. That would be like a direct assistance type thing. But then facility general is like anybody, any guest, would just have it on hand available for them.
Okay, thank you, Karen.
You're welcome. I mentioned program other again is mostly has been background checks that we do through TransUnion. I think we have some Indeed job postings fees on there as well. I know insurance has been a big topic for us in exec committee. At the end of the year at 56,000 in general auto liability, directors and officers, I think EPLI, stuff like that. It's been that's fallen in there. We budgeted for 30,000 for commercial property, but the commercial property, because it's tied into a large policy, I wasn't able to split it out. So I stuck it into the general liability category. So the 35,000 in total is still less than what we spent in total for the year. And then it also looks like our workers' compensation is paltry compared to what we budgeted for. But I think we definitely are on track now with ACCET. And we learned that the workers' compensation was based on payroll, and we hadn't been audited for our payroll by the workers' compensation policy. So that's an explanation as to why that's low.
And we're expected that once they complete the audit, we will have to be good on that. I mean, we'll have to pay them for the difference. It's a
Right.
payroll audit. It's done every year. They just hadn't
Yeah, we learned that once they do payroll audit, that if there's a gap, if we're short of what we've paid in, that we would need to catch it up. And then again, based on payroll, and as we're painfully aware, our payroll's gone up quite significantly in the last 3 years in total. And so I don't know when this particular workers' compensation policy provider did our last payroll audit. But now that we're with ACCET's auditing our payroll because they're doing our payroll on a biweekly basis. And so we will be paying our workers' compensation, or we have been paying our workers' compensation on a biweekly basis. I guess other thing, office supplies, I feel like I mention this every month too, but about $7,000 up on office supplies, but that's again because previously we did have our case managers that were buying their own office supplies because we couldn't afford to pay for them. So this last year we had the means to do it, and so we've been purchasing office supplies for them so they can get their jobs done, they can help out our guests. Do we have any other questions?
No, thanks, Karen. I would entertain a motion to accept the prepared financial statements for both November and December of 2024.
I'll make that motion.
All right, thanks. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Chuck. Motion is been made and seconded to accept the November and December 2024 prepared financial statements. If there's no discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. The next item on our agenda is the City of Lawrence 2025 funding agreement. just put that there because I knew that decision was kind of pending and we had approved our annual budget with some contingency on whether or not the city would actually agree to the money we needed. I don't think there's an item we don't need to take any action on it, but was there anything either James or Karen that you needed to kind of update us about that, or does anybody have anything they want to talk about regarding the city agreement? They did approve it for 3.5 million.
I guess there were several things in there that, in the city's detail here that caught my attention, and I just want to make sure what the implications are for us. You know, it looks like this agreement basically says that the city is out of the weather emergency program, and LCS is now the sole entity. Is that correct? I mean, at this point, come any winter issues next year, LCS will be the one that will be attempting to coordinate overflow locations and staff and provide that service.
I don't take it as we're gonna have to do overflow. I take it as we're gonna expand our beds by 48 and we're expected to utilize all vacancies to account for weather emergencies. I don't think it says specifically that we have to open overflows or coordinate overflows at all. I never got that impression. I never got that impression.
Because it was already in the agreement last year that we have to provide winter or severe weather sheltering. So is the language changed or is it?
And so it's saying that the city of Lawrence will no longer directly operate emergency weather shelters, but will provide strategic guidance. LCS will actively collaborate with community partners to secure additional bed space if shelter capacity is exceeded.
Is this in the agreement?
It's on page 13.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just pull it up so we can all see what we're looking at, we're talking about.
Items 5 and 6 under operation standards.
Okay. Oh, I think this is just putting in place what has been the practice this year. The city stood down. Like, I think the train depot was used as a,
Well, that was last year. Oh,
right, but like
2023.
the practice this current last couple of months has been that the city is basically coordinating, but they're not operating a shelter. So it says the city will no longer directly operate emergency weather shelters, but will provide guidance and operational support.
So actually, technically, they did. The HRT team was certainly part of the whole overflow, situation. There was ended up being two locations for overflow. First United Methodist Church, and then the University Community of Christ Church. We provided at First United Methodist Church some volunteers, including myself, some volunteers, and HRT also provided either one or two staff, depending upon which shift it was. And then if there was further overflow need to go to University Church, HRT basically staffed that. So they, and the coordination of all of that, literally night by night, was done between James and Kim at LCS, myself at First United Methodist Church, and then Misty and Cicely on the other end. I believe, as I read this, I believe the intent here is that level of, if you will, participation on the city side would be expected.
So the same as it has been done this year, like the last few months.
Not to the same degree that it was done here
Okay, so,
in the last couple of months.
okay.
I would, I've
Misty,
not spent a lot of time, reviewing this, but my read is that I think to James's point that LCS will be in a position to have adequate bed space, as a rule, to have adequate bed space.
okay,
If there were to be, because we can't predict, there's a lot of things we can't predict here, okay? But if there were to be a need for more bed space on a given night than what LCS would actually have or be legally permitted to have, if you will, in the building, then I think it would be incumbent upon LCS to work something out with some overflow option, somewhere. I think that's what this is saying, but James, you've been more involved in the development of this.
Yeah, one of the things that we did early in the year was we started working with the county, and we started putting a plan together for weather emergency. And then throughout the year, Misty has shored that up. She did the training with the churches and things like that to get people on board. When we had our first weather emergency in January, I think we had people online to be scheduled, but that fell through when we didn't get enough volunteers. So First United Methodist Church was steadfast in their commitment to weather emergency. The city helped staff John with volunteers, and then they did university. And then I think there was another shelter that had pets. That lasted maybe a week or so in January. After that, it was just John and LC. It was the First United Methodist Church and LCS doing that primarily. And then the HRT team was able to staff some overflows periodically during the last 2 months. I would say we've been in weather emergency for the last 2 months exclusively. And so with the addition of the 2 shelters, John's capacity was maybe 25 to 30 beds. University was 25 to 30 beds, that's 60 beds. With the additional 48 beds that we'll have for night by night, and the ability to still have 140 inside, we should be able to handle the majority of weather emergency as far as numbers wise. But what we won't be able to handle is the people that for whatever reason will never come to LCS. That's where we're going to have an issue with. And so what we'll have to do is coordinate to see if there still be community partners willing to operate overflow shelters for the majority of people that will not come. What we had is people waiting on John to open no matter what. And when he didn't open, they didn't come to LCS. They just didn't get sheltered if he didn't open occasionally. I think those were times where the weather was fluctuating between 32 and 40 or something like that, where it dropped below 32, maybe a couple of degrees all night. Or when John was inundated and opened. John was there every day. I didn't do what John did. John was at weather emergency every day was open. So people had to take time off. They had to close when they were able to. And when they closed, we went over our capacity to make sure that people had a place to go. We never turned anybody away. saying we were full. We just never did that for the last 2 months. We tried to coordinate as best we could with First United and HRT University Church when they staffed that to make sure we had places for people to go. So I believe this to say is that they won't be the ones coordinating that, because HRT did a lot of time coordinating with John and myself to do some of that legwork when they were opening other shelters. But the majority of that work was done between LCS and First United. So I think we can continue that. I don't want to speak for John, but I don't know if John wants to do it again. I would say no, John. We'll do the best we can. But if we need you, we'll call you. I mean, we'll coordinate. We'll have a plan in place before weather emergency. Before we get to that season again, it's not over yet, because I'm pretty sure we'll get some more cold nights. So, but I don't take this as that we have to. I don't take this as we have to open up additional spots. One of the things that once all of our construction is done, I'm going to reevaluate what our bed capacity could be when we need weather emergency. It won't be the normal capacity. It'll just be to increase our weather emergency by the available spaces that we have and that we can house people safely. We could house more people, but not in a safe manner, because we don't have the facilities to do that. And once we get these renovations, we will be able to do that. So I look at it as more of us looking at a way to accommodate the need for additional beds. We even filled up the village. Any vacancies at the village we utilized. So we were at full capacity everywhere during the last, especially in February. We're at capacity.
So what are under our special use permit are our numbers as far as our capacity? How are we defined on that?
125 is our normal capacity. We can overflow up to 140 during weather emergency. With the addition of the 24 pallets, we'll be able to increase our normal capacity by 48 beds. That takes us to 173, I believe. And so our normal capacity will be 173. We'll be able to overflow to an additional 15. But what I'm planning on doing is being able to increase that overflow, not the normal capacity, but the overflow, so we can have the ability to have more bed space when we need to for weather.
Now, I know on our building use, our occupancy is including both guests and staff, just for a total number of bodies in the building. Is that the same scenario with the shelter?
No, it's just beds. Our special use is for beds only, not occupancy.
So do we have an occupancy definition from the fire department?
Not that I'm aware of.
If I could, I'd add just maybe one or two more pieces to what Jane just said for some perspective. So when they were at 140 on a given night, and also 50 at the village, when they were at that point, the number of people, in addition to that, the number of people that us and university in total dealt with, or unique individuals, with 67. Okay, so we effectively saw and dealt with an additional 67 people since January 4th. The reason I think that number is important to know and important to keep in mind is when we talk about the addition of pallet 24 and the number that can be housed there, you're talking about 48 more people Now, we're starting to get closer, obviously, to the number we actually housed in addition to LCS. And then to James's point there, looking to have even more capacity than that. Coupled with the confidence that I have, which is a lot, to be honest with you, that we're actually going to continue to see our numbers go down because of the number of people that all of the programs that are in place are getting housing. So as a for instance, I know we can sit here and say, well, that's about 200 people, and that's a lot of people. There would have been 121 more than that this winter, had we not successfully housed 121 people since last April through the programs that LCS has in place for housing development and the work that HRT has done. That work is just starting, folks. This was the first year, and it wasn't even a full year of that work being done. Prior winters, as far as winter emergency shelter, and I've been involved in all of them, prior winters, that wasn't happening. Our numbers were just going up and up and up and up. And there was no numbers going, going the other direction. So I have, for what it's worth, I have a pretty high level of confidence that while it's good to be prepared and it's good to plan for even more bed spaces than we had this year, I'm far from convinced that we're going to need as many bed spaces come next winter as we actually needed this year. Now, I might be wrong. I said earlier, we can't predict everything about the future, but that's the direction that this is going vis-a-vis the changes that have been made and continue to be implemented. So I'm not planning on getting that call, James.
You won't be the first call, John. I really admire what you've done these last couple of months.
Thanks, John, for adding that perspective. Chuck, did you have anything else you wanted to point us to look at?
Yeah, I guess a couple of things, and some of it comes into play probably with some of the other programs that are being talked about. So on page 11 of the agreement, when we're talking about the item 10, which is and this is one that I think is probably really critical to ultimately to our success as an organization, and that is the county residency requirement. And I'm not real clear on how those reviews are happening and what the operational reality of it is and how that's playing out. I don't think this is necessarily new, but it's pretty explicitly stated here, and just curious on how that residency factor comes into play.
James,
You want to know how that's implemented?
Yeah.
Chuck, so one of the things we do is we, being a low barrier shelter, we don't ask people to verify with identification and things like that, but we do ask a series of questions as to where were you last housed, where was your last job, and things like that. We get it on self-reported. If somebody comes into our services and is self-reported, once they meet with the case manager, a case manager does a deeper dive by doing the coordinated entry assessment, and then we look to verify the information that's given to us. And a lot of times during that verification process or that assessment process, we start to see where someone has lived before by services that they've received. And then we can identify how long they've been a Douglas County resident, or have they resided somewhere else recently. So the first level is always self-reported in a low barrier shelter. We don't ask people for ID. We do ask, but we don't make it mandatory. So we ask if you have an identification or do you have a driver's license and things like that. If people say they don't have one, we say, okay. And then we start to do a process to help them obtain that. And during some of these assessment processes, we start to be able to validate or invalidate the information that was given us. So that's what we started to do. One thing we do is when we identify someone that hasn't been a recent Douglas County resident, not a recent Douglas County resident, but been in the county for I think it's 6 months or more. I forget what the cutoff is. We then refer them to HRT. Then HRT works with them to identify their not so much their community of origin, but where they lived prior and where they have the support and where they would like to go back to. And then they work to do that. I think at last count, I don't know why the number of like 82 people is stuck in my head, but HRT has assisted quite a number of people back to their place of origin with this process.
James, could you talk a little bit about that process when and if it has had an example wherein someone was leaving their place of origin due to domestic violence or some situation where they were returning to their place of origin would not be the best place for them. Has there been an example by which we've had a guest that is needing supports to maintain residency that is not a Douglas County resident, but looks to receive services that would support some financial assistance and some supports also with resources they can get and gather because they are fleeing domestic violence? Have we had?
You know, we've had some. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead and finish, Christina. I'm sorry.
No, I'm done. I think that was it. If you're answering, then you understand the question.
I definitely understand the question, and we have had occasions where we've had people come to us fleeing domestic violence. They've been supported by other agencies where they're coming from, and so they come here. And if we cannot secure them a space in with Willow domestic violence, we do house them. One of the things that I can tell you, Lawrence Community Shelter is not a safe location for people fleeing domestic violence. It's just not that. We do that. We let people know that we can only protect their anonymity to a certain level because of the nature of us not being a secure location. Like we protect everybody's anonymity. But yeah, we've had a few occasions where that's happened. We do try to get people into services that are more suited for protection. We've had people that did not want to go to Willow, and so we have housed them. So there have been occasions where we do that, but it's all coordinated through HRT. So they can be the factor that makes some of those determinations about should they do the verification on that. They work with the agencies that are supporting them to come. And I've always said yes, if they need a safe place to come and Lawrence Community Shelter is the last result, I say yes. So we never turn anybody away for that. I don't think it's the best place for somebody fleeing domestic violence to be totally honest and safe. I always encourage them to reach out to KCSDV, the hotline, or Willow Domestic. Since I've been there, I can only think of 1 or 2 times where Willow has had a vacancy that was able to accept someone. So to answer your question, yes, we do what we can to protect someone fleeing domestic violence. That is one of the exceptions to that. But that's coordinated with HRT. That's why this works, is because we coordinated through HRT, so they could take the time to decide, because they're the ones that are buying the bus tickets and coordinating the travel, things like that. We do house them if they're working with HRT until they can come up with a plan. And we've had some individuals that refuse to work with HRT They might start off being very amenable to working with HRT to come up with a plan. But then once they stop working with HRT, we're notified that they're no longer working with HRT, and so their stay at LCS ends when they're not working with HRT to develop a plan.
Thanks, thanks, James.
You're welcome.
Any other discussion or questions around this?
Yeah, I guess, and I think this is the last one that caught my attention, that I'd like to hear the details on it, sounding very positive, having to do with once the Pallet 24 project is completed, then we're anticipating basically transitioning into a more full day service practice rather than exiting people at 8 a.m. every morning. Is that how I read that agreement? Is that correct?
Not for night by night. What we will do is Pallet 24 is the first stage of some of the renovations that we're looking at. That would still be considered night by night. We will have additional bed space inside the shelter for another program, which we're thinking between 40, maybe 40 beds, which will be a 30-day program. So that's where the increase in the day services will come. People that are willing to work with shelter case managers to identify and address the barriers they have to housing, help them become employed. So that's what we're working on doing that. But there'll still be a night by night program where people will have to exit.
I think, yeah, Charlie's.
So item 6 on page 10 reads in part, once Pallet 24 is complete, all 125 beds within the LCS main emergency shelter will have the option to stay at the shelter during the day to receive programming, provided individuals are compliant with case management.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the 30-day program or 90-day program, and with the ability to house people in Monarch. So that'll be the 125. That's not the additional 48 for night by night.
Okay.
So we're gonna move up to get up to that number once we have the programs in place, but we have to have those restroom facilities. We have to have more storage. Right now we've got a storage container that we can't even get into because it's overflowing, and we still don't have enough space to store things. So those improvements are very crucial to some of the things we have to do in order to be able to house on a daily basis 125 people. It's doable because if you would have walked in the shelter any day during weather emergency during the daytime, you would have never assumed that there was 140 people in the building, but there were, and it was running pretty smooth. So we can do it. It's just going to be so much more amenable and how do I want to say this? More comfortable for people to have access to showers without having to wait in line and wait all day to take a shower, because we only had 3 showers for men during night by night, 80 people. So yeah, we're going to be able to do it. It's just that we have to make sure we have those facilities done in order to transition to that. So when we open Pallet 24, we won't have the ability to have that many in the building yet, because part of that space will be being worked on and construction will be going on. So we'll still have people in a program in the warehouse where we'll have people there, but it'll be limited until once that's completed, we can get it back up to capacity to do that.
So what I'm hearing is it will happen, but there's some work that needs to be completed
Right.
before it's
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah.
But we will be in compliance with the agreement.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this may be leaping into the realm of the executive director report, but with those projects, do you have any real sense of where we are on the timing on either the completion of the ballot 24, or then the other additional improvements to the building that will follow?
No, I don't have a sense of when that's gonna be started. The holdup has been our engineers and scheduling and building permits, and what I was assured that once they do start the construction, it should take 2 months to get Pallet 24 up and constructed. One of the good things about Pallet 24 is they just have to break the concrete up to run conduit lines and run plumbing lines under the concrete. They're going to replace the concrete, and then the pallets can be installed on top of the concrete. I don't think they'll have to put an additional layer, but the pallets will be constructed by the people that own Pallet 24. They come out and construct the pallets, and then we set them on the concrete and anchor them to the ground. So that process doesn't take that long. It's just running the electricity and getting it all wired to the places where they're going to go. And I don't know where we are in that process. I think there's a lot of things that stall this process. I'm not a construction person. I'm not an engineer, but I do know I'm glad I'm not, because it's taking a lot of time and I'm not getting a lot of answers. But I will definitely make sure I have a report for you. I'll bring a report to the executive team. Yeah, maybe next week or a week after, but I've been sick all week, so I've been out of the game this whole week, and it seems like it's been a long time, but it's just been a week. So yeah, I'll have updates for you soon.
So the difference between what the process with the Pallet Village and Pallet 24, with Pallet Village, the city did all of the construction of the units and attended to the utilities and things of that nature. Whereas with Pallet 24, that's our responsibility for the actual construction and placement and.
No, I think the city used contractors too. They used PEC that wrote the plans for Pallet 20. For the village, they're the same ones that's writing the plans for Pallet 24. But they use their own internal construction, or they hire contractors also to break up the concrete and do all that. They just didn't have to wait on building permits and things like that because they're the division that does that is the ones that was responsible for that, so they didn't have to go through all that. Is what I'm being told. So
All right, is there any other discussion about the city's agreement with us? Thanks, Chuck, for getting us through that. I appreciate your attention to these details. I will say, Aaron submitted the first invoice to the city, so I know we're getting this agreement a little late into the beginning of our budget here, but as soon as it was approved, I'm pretty sure she pulled the trigger on that email. Thanks, Karen. Karen, do you want to go into, or do you have anything to say about the agreement before we move into the annual audit?
Nothing. I was just gonna reiterate, or well, not reiterate, but I was gonna mention that I did send out the invoice to the city for $875,000, which would cover the first 3 months of the new 2025 contract. Once we receive those funds, we had budgeted for last year a 50-cent increase per hour for our CDA members. And now that the 2025 contract has been approved and we are waiting funds, once we get those funds, we will be backdating to the first of the year, all of those wages, a 50-cent increase, and then going forward, added on to everybody's paychecks. So now that we have, now that it's a sure thing, that's coming. So I just want to make sure that I mentioned that, and I know we had
Yeah.
a lot of discussion on that too.
Thanks for pointing that out. That is pretty important. We had kind of held off on that until we knew for sure we were getting this agreement.
Right. Right.
I'm sure staff will appreciate getting that. All right, let's go down to the annual report. You want me to?
Yeah, I'll let you
So-
drive and I'll spare you guys my notes.
So this is the 2023 report.
Yes, so we just received this, this audit report was approved in exec committee due to the timing that we need to have our 2024 audit completed for the city, so that our audited financials can be incorporated in theirs as we are a component unit of the city, due to receiving majority of our funding from the city. Anyway, so these were approved. I'm gonna try and be brief with this. The most important thing about these financial statements is their opinion. And in that second paragraph, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material aspects, the statements of financial position, modified cash basis of LCS as of December 31st, 2023 and 2022, and the related statements of activities, modified cash basis, statement of functional expenses, modified cash basis, and statements of cash flows, modified cash basis for the years then ended in accordance with modified cash basis accounting as described in note 1. That means that they did not find anything that looked suspicious. If they did find anything suspicious, we have submitted documentation as to why that is. But in terms of materiality, basically there was nothing that significantly wrong with our financial statements in 2023. So that's great. This is a good thing. They think that everything looks good. Let's scroll down to page 5. It's page 3 of the financial audit reports, according to their page numbers. It should be the statements of financial position. Okay, perfect. All right, so on this page, I just want to draw our attention to the total current assets, 31,824 ending 2023 compared to 183,835. Think we're all painfully aware of how very close the shelter was to closing at the end of 2023. So seeing that current assets, which essentially is our cash, makes sense. Let's scroll down to in the liabilities and net assets section. Total net assets ended for the year is 2.7 million, which is down to almost $300,000, which means we were in the red in 2023. Also makes sense. Did anybody have any questions on this page? Nope.
No,
Okay.
it was just kind of a sober reminder
Yeah,
of that, it's
it's like trying to get away from 2023, but we have to talk about it. Reflection is a good thing, right? So let's go down to the next page, which is our statements of activities, modified cash basis. Only thing I want to hit on here is a change in net assets. So in 2022, the change in net assets was negative 332,587. In 2023, it was less. So less by $36,000, again, which tracks with everything that has happened in 2023. Let's go down to the next page. Our statements of functional expenses, modified cash basis. All right, I'm gonna scroll down just a little bit more right there. Okay, so this is something that I wanted to hit on, because I heard it mentioned at the city commission meeting in a public comment. About how the majority of our expenses go to salaries and wages. And typically you would think that, yeah, that is like an administrative thing. But due to the nature of our work, it's not so simple. I think these audited financial statements represent more fairly where those salaries are going, and it's going to program services, so directly assisting our guests at the shelter. This breakout from our Kindred prepared financial statements breaks it out. Let's see my notes. 75% program, 20% management, general and administrative, and 5% fundraising for 2023. I think that's a fair representation of what was going on. I think that was, when I say 75% program, 20% MG&A, 5% fundraising, that's executive director's salary in 2023. All other employees in 2023, I have at 95% program, 5% MG&A. So the majority of our salaries and expenses are going to directly help individuals at the shelter. Everything, DSAs are a large part of our workforce, and we have our case managers and then management. So it makes sense that that would be our largest expense. And I just wanted to hit on that even though it's not represented in our monthly statements, that's something that I'm aiming to change in 2025 so that it's more accurately represented as like, okay, these are the salaries and wages of our employees that are directly working with our guests and providing those services to our guests. Does anybody have any questions on this page?
Nope.
Okay. That is pretty much it. The notes in the beginning of the financial statement where they're talking about their basis of the opinion really says just to look at note one. Note one talks about our basis of accounting, which again is modified cash basis. It differs from generally accepted accounting principles. You might have heard that as GAAP. Because of how we recognize grants receivable, any pledges. I don't believe we've had pledges. I don't know if that's something that we'll be developing soon with our strategic development team. But it just is different on how we recognize certain things. I'm aiming to change a little bit of how we recognize some things too, just so that we can have a more accurate basis for how we're seeing things in our books. Not to align completely with GAAP. That is something that I've talked about with our auditors to see if that would place us in a much better, I don't know, they asked if it was necessary for us to do it that way. We are not required right now by any of the grant funding agreements to change our accounting basis to GAAP. They also mentioned that it would be much more expensive for us to be audited on a GAAP basis because there's a lot more involved. There's a lot more considerations doing GAAP basis accounting. So in the spirit of not spending more money than we have to, we are going to keep them in modified cash basis of accounting. But I do aim to utilize more accounts payable, more accounts receivable type things, just so that we can see accurately throughout the year what we have been spending as if we were GAAP basis, but we're not. So just as an FYI to you all.
I have a question.
Okay.
On page 10, it talks about concentration of credit risk. And historically, I get that we haven't had a big exposure, but as we go forward, and I'm not sure People's Bank, that's not its name anymore, actually.
Yeah, Bank Midwest.
Yeah, but going forward, we want to pay attention as we develop any sort of reserve fund or whatever, that we either cover that risk, which you can do by pledging security, the bank can pledge securities for you, or you can hold a certain amount in a separate bank, but I get historically in 22 and 23, this probably wasn't relevant. But as we go forward, we wanna make sure that all of our money is insured.
Certainly, I do feel like that would be a great topic of discussion for another board meeting. So we hash out how we want to keep funds when we do get them from the city, especially since they're quite large. Again, mentioning that the first quarter invoice and expected payment is $875,000. That is definitely way greater than $250,000, and I don't think we want to keep it all in one place. It's, let's not keep all our eggs in one basket. I totally agree. And this probably could be a really great time to start looking at opportunities for perhaps having a money market fund, or we're keeping some of that in there that's insured, and perhaps some other easily accessible accounts. But like I said, I could start my research and talking with our bank to see what we can do. That would be advantageous for us and also keep all of our money insured.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Shannon, for bringing our attention to that. Is there more you want to show us on this audit?
Not on this audit. I'll just give you some highlights from, we received a SAS 114 letter. Honestly, I don't know what the letters stand for. But they're reiterating in this letter that, the financial statement disclosures are neutral, they're consistent and clear. They didn't experience any difficulties in dealing with me, performing and completing their audit. They've asked their questions, I've answered their questions. They don't believe there was any foul play involved. And they are pleased to report that they had no such disagreements with management on financial accounting, reporting, or an auditing matter. So those are really important and really great things to mention about our audit, because that means that we're doing things right. And they don't have any problem. And really, if I ever have a question, they're more than willing to answer any questions that I have, particularly with how things need to be reported, or how we need to be recognizing things. So yeah, that's 2023.
I want to also bring attention to everyone if they haven't seen this, but Karen's been publishing our financial data. Help me find, oh, there it is, under the
Yeah.
About Us tab for the new website. And this is kind of an effort to continue to build transparency around our finances. And you can see the tax returns, the audits, the SAS 114 letter that she just mentioned. And, this is kind of effort, I think, part of the work of trying to build confidence that if you do donate to the shelter, it's being well managed, and the accountability for what the money we're receiving is available for the public to review. Appreciate you getting that on there, Karen. And then
Absolutely.
she's also gotten us listed with the Charity Navigator, and then there's one other one. Gold, help me out. This is one that
Oh,
GuideStar.
GuideStar, yes.
GuideStar, and GuideStar has some tier system that one of the requirements would be some disclosure around our board of directors. We haven't talked about that as that committee, but we kind of been having some discussions about it. So. But it all looks really good, Karen. We appreciate your effort to kind of make this more visible to everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, and I really hope to get it to a place where people are understanding where our money is going, and not just seeing it in these very high level coding accounts. Because I do think it's important for us to understand where our money is going, and if there is something that is maybe we're spending too much on that we need to really keep an eye on. I'll be honest with you, I look at this all day. We're doing, I'm in the midst of transitioning our accounting system. And so, you know, I've been looking at 2023 and 2024. I look at 2025 every day. Just making sure that our expenses are in line with what we're doing. We have some excellent policies in place to control our spending and to make sure that we are aware of where our money is being spent before it happens. So I am very pleased with how, since I've been involved anyway, that we've been able to just have a little bit more accountability than what was there before.
So now our 2024.
Did you want to talk to us about the 2024 audit? This is gonna happen very quickly,
Yes.
which is a little unusual from our experience the last year and a half.
Yeah. So like I mentioned before, because we're a component unit of the cities, due to receiving majority of our funding is from the city, so that makes us a component unit of theirs. We must have our audit completed and put together, signed off on by and to the city by April 30th. My goal for us this year was April 1st. Got off to a late start. But right now, Cummins, Kaufman, and Schmidt-Lean have everything that they have requested to initiate the audit and to plan it. And so I'm just waiting for them on their testing materials so they can get back to them with their requesting their audit samples and such, answer any questions that they may have. And I just want to kind of put it on y'all's radar that we might need to have a special board meeting to approve those financial statements. I did tell Charlie that 2023 needed to be approved like right away so that they could start on 2024. That was like an absolute. But normally we would have approved the annual audit during our normal board meeting. But due to how fast we need to turn around our audit to give to the city so that they can get their audit and their annual report out on time by June 30th, we need to have ours done. And so that might be something that we need to do in April. Of course, you all will be the ones to decide if we need to do it, if we need to hold a special meeting or not. But I figured I would just kind of put that on your radar.
So, as Kara's explaining, what happened with the, 2022 audit was presented to the board and we all, voted to accept it. And then for the 2023 audit, the timing was such that the exec committee reviewed it with Karen and essentially then voted to permit me to sign the management letter. And so we did that without calling a special meeting. I think what I hear you saying, Karen, is we might anticipate having to pull a special meeting together in order to kind of do it more appropriately for the 2024 audit.
Correct.
Not
So that,
something-
because let me see, scheduling wise, I think we have our April meeting is April 24th. I think that would be okay. That's if we had the audited financials then to approve. So if they come earlier, I think April 24th might be okay. Again, I'll leave that up to you guys. If it comes afterwards, then we will definitely need to have a special meeting unless you all decide that it's okay for it to be approved in the exec committee again for 2024. And then we can maybe get back on a regular schedule for 2025. I did want to, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. So,
I have something different to talk about, but you go ahead.
okay, I guess I would like to ask if you're to kind of keep us consistent with what we've done in the past. It might make sense to still ask the whole board to accept the 2023 audit. Even though we have finalized it at the exec committee level. If that is something you guys want to do, we can kind of do it retroactively or not retroactively, really, because it's done. If you'd want that, I'd just entertain a motion to accept it.
Now say that again, what did you say?
So, in the past, we've had the whole board consider the annual audit and accepting it. It's been a board level decision. This time, because of the timing of needing to get the 2023 audit approved before we could start the 2024, which is then due by the end of April, the exec committee essentially approved it. So, and I don't know that we have a clear, policy on how we do it, but I just recognize that we previously in 2022, it was the whole board that made that decision. So if this
So wouldn't
2023,
just
we
do a
did,
motion to ratify your approval.
that's what I'm asking, if you want to do something like that to sort of
Might as well,
feel like we've
we got it, we've
kind of
looked at it.
completed the process.
I don't wanna do it, I never wanna do it if I don't get to see it, but once I
Right.
get to see it,
So I guess I'd entertain a motion then to affirm the acceptance or how we want to put it.
yeah,
You're the lawyer.
yeah, I make a motion that the board ratify the executive team's approval of the 2023 audit.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second? to the
I'll
motion?
second that.
Thank you, John. Is there any other discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion to ratify the executive committee's approval of the 2023 annual audit, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, thank you so much for that. Regarding the 2024 audit and the timing, I think let's wait to see what happens. Maybe that night we can decide to do. They delegate that to the exec committee if that's what it takes. Or as Karen suggested, we could also schedule a special meeting. You had one of the,
It does concern me on the timing with our board meeting in the sense that, I mean, it seemed like there were a couple of really minor modifications in there. For instance, a discussion of the, you know, coverage, insurance coverage levels, trying to remember what it was. They had not put the word not in there perhaps, to say that we were not at risk because of our low balances. So if it's at all possible, I think it would be good to have that document come to the executive board for a first review. Anything that we catch can be remedied in advance of the board meeting, rather than potentially catching those details at the board meeting and then being left with a, 5-day window to come back around and address any modifications.
so I think you're throwing out there, is could we see it on the 21st of April? Could the exec committee see it on the 21st?
Potentially, yes.
Karen, do you have a thought on that?
I will ask. I will check in with them. I will check in with them next week to see where they're at. Just making sure that we're on schedule to get things done. My correspondence with them had been that because I was running late on some things, I think it was about a week and a half. I said I think we could be okay if we could have a draft by 4:15. So hopefully we can stay beholden to that, but like I said, I'll check in with them next week, see where they're at, see if they're on schedule, if they have any questions or they need anything else from me that I can provide them to help with the audit.
I think another option would be if we didn't get it ahead of the meeting. The exec committee meets on the 28th, that still hits the deadline for the city. So we'll keep on task on this. Carrie, you had one other thing you wanted to mention in your financial report?
I did. So we this week we were awarded $13,000 750 from FEMA's Emergency Food and Shelter Program. About half of that we'll be spending on shelter, and the other half on their category is called other foods, but we'll be able to use it for the cleaning supplies and some other items, or general supplies, I should say, because that's how we have it on our books. General supplies related to guests. So thought that was a nice surprise to have. We didn't have any emergency food and shelter program funding last year. I wasn't aware of the application periods for these funding opportunities, but this year I was made aware. This year I applied, and we were able to get some money for that. So I just wanted to report that.
Yeah, that's great news. Thanks for sharing that with us. Okay. I think we can move down now to the regular agenda. The discussion we had last month around how do we want to form committees? Do we want to, continue to have an operations committee? Who's going to serve on that committee? There's a little bit of discussion around the need to have a fundraising committee, or a committee that might work alongside the staff committee that has been established to do the fundraising efforts. And the exec committee thought it'd be helpful to kind of have some more dialogue around that to see if we might identify or just decide, do we want to have a board committee on fundraising? And then if so, who would want to be on it? And this would be probably a committee that would work more closely with staff that are trying to kind of build our capacity to do fundraising this year. So just gonna open it up for that discussion, and I know we don't have a lot of time left. We want to get our reports in. Maybe we can spend the next 7 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think a little bit of context because of the, line item in the proposed city agreement. States that we will reduce city funding reliance 10% by 2025, 25% by 2026. I think it's pertinent that we start having these discussions now. I know that the LCS is also developing strategic goals for fundraising and engaging donor sponsorship and looking at what that looks like for the LCS to do internally, but what can we do to support that as board members? I do know that coming onboarding to the LCS board of directors, I was told that would be a significant part of our job. I think fundraising is, part of being a member, but I definitely want to put a strategic plan and a goal that we set together and then we talk about to, reduce our city funding reliance, and also to make sure that we are running with the community in a way that is grassroots oriented, continuing to connect, and then to continuing to bridge any kind of community engagement that we can support. So I think I'm happy to have this discussion. If it's preliminary, if we can't really talk about committing another committee to time and having that kind of be where we place our time, happy to even make it a round conversation where we join LCS strategy internally and a board member contributes to a conversation and commitment to that conversation that they already have forming, and they include a board member. So yeah, thank you for opening up the space and time for that, because I know that was a discussion I wanted to kind of continue diving in with a larger group.
What others thinking about it?
I agree with Christina. I don't know if it's in conjunction with the staff's committee. I mean, I don't think we wanna have two separate things going really. But that, it is gonna require board participation. And we are going to need to come up with a big chunk of money before too long.
Yeah.
So.
Perhaps, though, if John's crystal ball,
If what now?
if John's crystal ball is working well, we're going to slowly be tapering our operations. And so the idea of a diminished budgeting is part of that picture. I guess part of my concern also is I just, I know that I've seen reference to significant and somewhat desperate fundraising appeals in the last 2 or 3 weeks from the Lawrence Arts Center, from Haskell, from Bert Nash. I'm not convinced immediately how deep that pool is for the amount of need that seems to be expressed. So, I want us to be realistic in our expectations.
I get that, and I attended the county commission meeting work session with Bert Nash, I think. I mean, I think there's a. Pretty much all the COVID money's been spent. And so a lot of agencies got used to that level of funding that wasn't sustainable, and I think there's going to be a lot of, I agree, of that in the community. That there's gonna be a shortage and there's gonna be a lot of appeals. But, the hospital, right? I mean, the hospital's been, I'm not, or I know of one agency that's not in trouble, and I think we're seeing the other side of the push of don't raise the tax mill levy, right? So that our local government funders are also gonna be constrained.
Well, I think we're seeing all the way through every level of government, a sense of not of increases coming through the pipeline, but rather, tell us how 5 to 15% reductions will play out within your agency.
Yeah.
But again, if indeed we are achieving success with our core efforts and diminishing the population that we are serving, that shouldn't be a threat.
I would say at the very least, Chuck, that there's I'll say strong potential for that. Okay. I'll try to be brief with this. The whole strategic plan in place for everyone is built around the built for zero model. To reach functional zero. In this case, the goal is to reach functional zero by 2028. I don't know if that's gonna happen or not by 2028, but that's the direction it's going. Now, if you look at every community that has used Built for Zero as the model over the years that ultimately reach functional zero, the community shelter was intentionally a central part of that whole program, and ours is in this program. That's how we're using it. That's how we're modeling it. That's how we're managing it. In every one of those cases, those community shelters, while they didn't go away, they became places that ended up serving quite a different function. And they served quite a different function because their numbers went from 200 to 20 over time. That's what it has the potential to do. I don't have a crystal ball, but I can tell you we're in the early years and the early stages of trying to use that to make that work. And if it does, and to whatever degree it does, it certainly should over time incrementally reduce the number of people on a daily basis that need to be served in in this way. When you look at the premise of the model is if you reach functional zero, if you truly do that, what that means is that homelessness in your community has become greatly more rare. And once entered, becomes significantly briefer. Okay. And ultimately less reoccurable. Those are the three results that are typically seen from that. So, you know, while you may have, I'll just use a number, you may have 100 people. Right now, if we have 100 people, we have 100 people for an extended period of time. You may have 100 people on a given night, but a week later, it's down to 75, and a week later, it's down to 50, because the infrastructure is in place to get them moving forward much more quickly. So if we don't get to that point, if we don't get to the point where the Lawrence Community Shelter is dealing with many fewer people on a given night, then frankly, for the most part, we have failed with this whole A Place for Everyone program. And that's more than my opinion. That's just the nature of the beast. The program is built to accomplish these things. And when you do that successfully, these things get greatly reduced along the way. Now, would I sign up for banking on that? Right now, no. I think we ought to plan on figuring out how to raise $350,000. Because you always have to have a plan B. And sometimes a plan C, and sometimes a plan D. But it's got the potential to do that. It really does. And I'm not speaking about that from the perspective of if we would just do this, then this is what we could do. We're doing that. This city and this county made the decision a couple of years ago to be a built for zero community and a built for zero county. And subsequently built a strategic plan towards executing upon that. And that plan is in the early stages of actually being executed. And so far, knock on wood, so far, the results are pretty favorable. So we stand a chance of getting to that point, but it's early in the game.
All right, well, we don't have a lot of time left.
Yeah.
I didn't hear
I
anybody,
apologize.
jump up and say they want to be on a committee.
And here's my 2 cents on being on a committee to do that. Fundraising is gonna be necessary, and it's gonna be crucial. Okay, we're not a big board. I don't know so much that this needs to be a special committee as much as every one of us need to recognize that we're all in sales.
I
We're all in sales.
agree with that, it's all of it.
Okay, every company I've ever worked for, everybody's in sales. Right, we're all in sales. So to whatever degree, my opinion, to whatever degree we can and will use our abilities, our resources, our gifts to help with that cause. This is what we should do. And that's, I just throw that out there.
Well, take it, I'll, when it doesn't get a new committee, I think it just kind of falls to the exec committee. I think, or it falls to me, is how I kind of see it. I think we can continue having this dialogue.
Chuck, I'll be willing to be the instigator of fundraising engagement.
Okay.
As the one who has the greatest history of sales.
All right, I think we made a little progress, but let's continue this dialogue at the exec committee. We might, bring this back next month, have some more discussion about it. And maybe even have some help from staff, because I think as staff is doing more of this work, there might be more they can share with us about what our role can be that would be most supportive. That said, let's move down to the reports. James, are you still on the line there?
Yeah, I'm still here. I wanted to, since I don't have a lot of time, I'm gonna streamline what I was gonna talk about today. And
Okay.
I'll get right into our strategic development and our strategic development team, which coincides with what we're talking about with fundraising. We have been working, we've been meeting weekly since the beginning of the year to put together a strategy to actually reinvent LCS, the brand of LCS, to introduce that to the community, to engage donors, to re-engage donors, and to do fundraising. Right now, we have a new website, we have a new logo. We are starting on March 1st to re-engage with social media. We have a program that we're going to put together to do a 90-day blitz on social media. We're still working on the behind the scenes things of what we're going to do to reintroduce ourselves on social media. And that's to tell people who LCS is. Not who we were, but who we are now and what our goals are and how we're an integral part in we're the emergency shelter part of a place for everyone. And we're going to also do a better job at emphasizing that this is a community plan and we're a part of that plan. What we have to let people know is that everything homeless does not depend on LCS in the city of Lawrence. For a long time, we believe that the city, well, we were held responsible for everything that was supposed to be homeless and we were supposed to deal with it. We can't do that. What we can do is provide emergency shelter and we can house people with some of our programs and we can do that pretty well. And that's what we're gonna say. As part of a plan for everyone, we've increased our shelter beds. We're still increasing our shelter beds. We're increasing our programming. And now we're going to let people know how we're doing that and who we are. Part of what we're doing is we put together a survey to give to the board so the board can do amongst itself to talk about fundraising, just to give us an idea of what the board would be willing to do. So I wanted to bring it to the executive committee first. So on Monday, I'll share that with the executive committee to see if you want to realign it or how you want to introduce it to the rest of the board to start that process. We just met today. We have someone that's going to be, we have an ex-intern that used to work at LCS that she is, how do I put this? She's in marketing. She does marketing now and she's willing to do our social media and kick it off. She's happy to do that. She was just hoping that we had a budget more than $5 because she said that's what her budget was when she did it before as an intern. So I said, yeah, we can beat that budget. And so we plan to do an all-out blitz. I think we have a program in place to do a 90-day media blitz. To do that, we're going to develop PowerPoints. We're going to do some videos. We're going to do a lot of different things all at once simultaneously to kind of reintroduce ourselves to the community. The community has put a lot in us, and we're going to shore up the community that we're trustworthy, and we're going to show them how we're doing that. So we do have a plan in place, and part of our plan was to engage the board to see how we could engage the board to tap into the resources it has as individuals in the community to see how we can maximize that. I think Chuck was onto something when he was talking about reducing the budget doesn't only mean fundraising. It means looking at our budget as I don't want to say cuts, but restructuring our budget to not include some of the things that we don't need anymore. And a lot of the things that we're doing to get to a point where we can be amenable as emergency shelter and have those improvements made, we won't have to have that much money in those type of things, construction costs and maintenance costs. We still have some maintenance costs, but not the things that where we're getting that we don't have. So it's a restructuring of our whole budget. It's doing some fundraising, it's donor re-engagement, and we're going to put together a plan that we're going to submit to the city. I think the requirement is to have it submitted to the city in April about how we plan to do that. So we think we're right on point we're having a plan come together. And it's going to start off, it's going to be a comprehensive plan. It's not going to be a one just fundraising. I know that we just talked about today to have some small fundraising events with donor appeals, and then to do some large fundraising events later on in the year. We're going to culminate with some of those things, but we're looking at this as we're going to look at all fronts in order to do this. So I'm glad that was on the agenda today for the board to talk about, and I'll be bringing that to the exec team on Monday, the survey, so we can look at it and see how we want to start. It's just a survey to give us some answers as to what some of the thoughts are of the board, because I know some people are more comfortable with some things. I know everybody. I know when we did this before, we had to back out of some of the fundraising policies that we put into, that Karen had built into there. We had to take that out. We weren't at the point where we could do that yet. But I think we're at a point now where comprehensively we can all contribute a little bit to this effort that we're doing. The community took a chance and is willing to fund us, and we're willing to do whatever we can to add some relief to that tax relief. It's wonderful that they did that, and so we're willing to do our part. Excuse me. I was gonna talk about what we saw during weather emergency. I had some graphs that I put together or had put together to show kind of our capacity and some of the makeup over there. I don't have time to discuss the demographics. You know how when we get to demographics, it's pretty intense and there's a lot of detail there. So maybe I can table that and show it. I'll make sure these get uploaded into the website so you can just see. It's from November the 1st until the end of February, what the attendance looked like and what the makeup of the people we saw. It has one with just night by night, and then it talks about all our capacity. So we were at 190 at least one time, two times during the year, but the line graph that I'm looking at right now steadily goes up. It zigzags a lot, but it's trending upwards. And so one of the things I will say, as being here last year during this time and during this time, it's like night and day. And that's a testament to our DSAs who have bought into some of the structure that we put into place. When you're on the front line, every day might seem hectic, but it was not as hectic as it was before. And that's a testament to what they're doing, what we put in place and they said yes to. So I have to take my hat off to all our DSAs that showed up. I know this in February, we've had a lot of illness. We have a lot of people that are sick now because of weather emergency. We just had so many people together in one building that we have people sick. So I wanted to talk about that. I know we want to talk about insurance after I finish, but that's what I wanted to focus on. But yeah, I think if you want to have a committee, we would welcome a representative from the board to sit in on our strategic development team, just to be the conduit to the board and us to see how they could help us strategize on what we're doing. And just to do that, I can also make sure that we do a regular report on our fundraising efforts. I know I'm gonna bring it to the exec team before we introduce it to the city, but you'll see our plan before it's finalized, as we're ongoing, but we are working on it.
Thanks, James.
You're welcome.
Any questions? Chuck?
I have a question. Some of us had perhaps received a series of emails from a community member who was concerned about some of the aspects of operations at the shelter. And, you know, I look at the information that we have on our website. I feel like we do a good job of, I can't remember exactly how we're titling it, but it's basically guest expectations. We're pretty explicit about saying, as a guest, here's what's expected of you. And I think that's important to have that out there and publicly available. I suppose one thing that I'm not real clear on, I think we've discussed it in the past, is in essence, what is the appeal process? If somebody feels like they may have been cited for an infraction, or they may have been exited and they wish to appeal that process. I think that's something that doesn't have to be put on the website. We don't have to go through all of that explicitly, but maybe something that is on there as a line item under expectations, saying if for any reason, you know, you feel like you something should have been handled better, please take these steps. Here's who you should contact, things of that nature.
Well,
do we have an appeal process for decisions?
yeah, we do.
And I don't think that needs to be publicly stated. I think it just needs to be, if you have an issue you wish to appeal, contact.
All of our guests in their intake packet are made aware of our complaint appeal form. It's a dual form where if you want an appeal, a write-up, you can do that. If you want to file a complaint, complaints and appeals are different. What I've been reading from community members is that they have a lot of complaints about some of the things they view as negative interactions with guests. And so they would be filing a complaint about that because of the private nature of we don't discuss our guest services with individuals that are not the guests. And so it's hard to answer some of those complaints because the guests aren't writing a complaint. I would suggest that the guests write a complaint to some of the things that happened, and then I could deal with that directly with the guests. But as far as somebody advocating and complaining about what they perceive to be an injustice to a guest, it's hard to answer that because I'm not going to discuss a guest.
The time is 7:30 and the library
I think
is
we
closing
can-
at 8 p.m. We ask any patron needing a library card to come to the accounts desk immediately, since we will stop issuing new cards in 15 minutes. Any children or teens needing help calling for a ride home should go to the children's desk now. Thank you.
I was gonna say, I think we can have some more discussion of the exec committee. We've had this discussion on and off in the last year, and it's clear that there's still not that we need to do some more work on it. And I got some ideas, but I don't wanna, we're kind of at the end of our night. I appreciate the distinction between appeal and complaint, and acknowledging that there are people in the community that serve as advocates. And we really haven't done enough to figure out how to help advocates advocate well. Part of it is making their guest expectations transparent, because often that's what they're trying to do, is help people understand the expectations. So, is there anything else that you want to ask, or maybe I want to get us out of here without much more delay if possible?
Oh, James, you
Are we good?
you were interrupted by the automated voice here. What were you completing your thoughts there?
I believe so. I would just ramble on about, yeah, I would suggest that the best way for someone to express their complaint is to complain, is fill out the formal complaint. I think when we see a lot of feedback we're getting via emails, I can say that the total picture is not illustrated in a lot of these complaints. So there's a lot more to situations than what's been reported to us. I'm not sure if that's because they aren't aware of the situation or that's all they're getting, but they're not complete. So there's a lot of other things that's around some of those things that happen. I think some of the last rounds of emails that we got were complaints, and some of those things did not happen, to my knowledge. As I said, no one was turned away because we were full. What we do is coordinate with other places and spaces to see if we can find a place for them. We even on the day in question that it was said that a couple was turned away with a dog. I had been working with John that day to get somebody with the dog from his shelter that to come to the LCS. I said, yeah, we'll make room and you don't have to trade. He wanted to take 2 of our people and he would send those people. I said, no, we'll take them. We have space for them. We'd have been over 140, but we would have took them. They decided not to come. So I don't know if that was the case where people were turned away, but we've never turned anybody away for being full.
I think, I'd like to have some discussion about this, but not tonight. I'll just kind of share it.
I'll just wrap that up by saying there's always 2 sides to every story.
Yeah, I appreciate that. For those that aren't involved in these emails, so what has happened over the, several months really, is, some people, are receiving emails, and it's not just, board members, it's also city commissioners, staff. It just feels like we haven't found a way to funnel the energy that's out there to advocate for people that we're serving. And we need to think through how to do that in a way that's kind of more effective for everybody. Because if you don't, then advocates are going to continue to look for any way they can to help people they're advocating for. So we need to think through how to do that well. So if we had a good advisory committee in place, that might help. Maybe that would be one thing. But anyway, I think we just need to have more discussion about it, and I'd like to not do that tonight since we're at the end of our time limit. For the exec, is there anything else you wanted to say, James? Or can we?
No. Anybody have any more questions for me?
No. All right, I'm gonna do the exec committee report real quick. So you might recall we had a decision back in May of last year to establish a line of credit. And I wanted to make sure the rest of you are kind of aware of where we're at with it. The bank had provided some requests a few months ago that included the request that the city would agree to essentially put their lien on the property subordinate to the bank's lien for the credit line, for the line of credit. And the city has not agreed to do that. So recently I've tried to revive the discussion with the bank and said, what could we do? What would you suggest? And there are a couple options, one of which is to just simply lower the line of credit to 100,000. I think we had originally suggested maybe as high as 450,000 or something to that effect. And so that would be one option, would be just a smaller line of credit, and then they could proceed kind of as we originally planned. And then another option, which is maybe a little more comprehensive, would be to suggest or to pursue thinking about the current mortgage that we have with the city. And the interest rate on that is 2%. So this is not something we wanna mess around with, especially with interest rates as they are. But in a few years, the end of 2028, there will be a payment will come due, and it will be, almost 300,000. So is it something we should think about? Not just the line of credit, but also the loan that we have from the city. And the bank is also open to that discussion. So the exec committee had some more dialogue about this. James wasn't able to attend this week, so we're gonna have some more discussion on Monday about this. But we wanted to just keep you guys abreast of where things are at. And so it might be, we'll come back with kind of a proposal like, all right, we think we're gonna go with just the smaller line of credit, or hey, we think it's best to refinance the mortgage and also establish a line of credit. So those are two of the options we've been talking about. The next item is the insurance. So we've been reviewing our insurance policies, and we have a meeting scheduled in a few weeks to talk with representative from CEK Insurance to just really understand what our coverages are and examine if we need to make changes to those policies. The time it takes to institute those changes is probably such that we won't make policy changes this year, but we want to get ahead of it. And maybe there's some things we can change this year, but we want to really be careful about we have the proper amount of liability coverage, that the directors and officers insurance is appropriate. There's some concern around now that we're a union shop, if you will, do we have the appropriate insurance to consider with that change? Because that insurance hasn't really been examined since that pretty significant change to our workforce. So those are just two of the items we've been discussing. Wanted to keep you guys aware of that. Anything from the advisory committee report?
No action has been committed. I have on the to-do list to connect with James. At some point, James, we need to establish a meeting so that we could re-examine the applications, see if we need to push those out. We have a new website that could be advertised there if it isn't already, about the opportunity, and leave that as an application that we apply on our webpage. So some more discussion to be had about the advisory board for sure.
All right, thank you. Is there anything from the operations committee? Okay. Any other business or board member items? All right, well, then I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And is there a second?
Yes.
Okay, motion has been made to adjourn at 7:40. Thanks for staying a little late. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Someday I'm gonna vote. It's adjourned.
Is that?
It says